Welcome to the On Assignment podcast. My name is Will Derlick. This is my co-host, John Harvey. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good. Well, today is going to be an awesome topic that workaholics are going to enjoy to listen to.
That's right. Absolutely.
Today, we're going to be talking about work and how work is a godly thing that God designed. And to start off, I just want to hammer in that work was here before the fall. We go back to Genesis 2. Genesis 2 says that God took Adam and placed him in the garden to work it.
Mm-hmm.
So even in paradise, we're still required to work and to grow. And so it is a thing that God designed. And so as men, today we're going to talk about just rethinking and reshaping the way that we think about work to treat it as a form of worship and honor. And part of being on assignment is doing our trade and doing our job and doing it with a mission in mind. And so I guess to start off with, how can we as men rethink about work and apply that to our lives?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And I love this topic, by the way. I feel like that my life was transformed when I got a hold of this truth that when I go to work, it's more than just earning a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
That it's actually tied into God's assignment on my life, and that I can operate in the skills and the gifts that God gave me as a man. I can operate in those things on my job site, but it's more than just living for that paycheck, going to the 9 to 5 and just kind of getting that done with so that then I can look forward to the evening or the weekend. But it gave my work such a sense of purpose, understanding that God had me there for a reason.
Yeah.
And when you tie in God's assignment on your life to your work, it opens the door for you to look at work so much differently and to really begin to produce kingdom fruit in your life at such a greater level.
Mm-hmm.
And so that starts, though, in the way we think about work. And so I love where you're going with the conversation with this is how do we rethink work? Well, a lot of it ties into the fact that as men, we were created in God's image. And when we see God for the first time in Scripture, what's he doing?
Creating.
He's creating, right? He's producing. He is actually speaking into existence something that was designed and dreamed about and designed by him. And he's creating that as we see him for the first time in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that is in us as men that was made to create, that was made to produce, that was made to be fruitful. And it comes from the very one in whose image we were created, and that's God. And so understanding that oftentimes when we're young kids, you know, we have things that are planted into our minds and thinking about work that cause us to think in the wrong way about work. And work is not something that a lot of people look forward to doing. When you're like, would you rather play or would you rather work? A lot of people would rather play than work.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that there's also something, though, when you take work away from a man, he tends to wither up and become useless and really not be in a very good place. So we can see in the lives of men who don't have that place of really seeing the value of work, we can kind of see that they get caught up in a place of purposelessness, and it becomes a grind and it becomes a burnout. Men get burnt out, and you begin to see what culture has begun to shape work as come to light.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of those things that we see when you're talking to a guy on a job site in construction? When you talk to him about his work, a lot of times he hates his job.
Mm-hmm.
He really does not enjoy his work. He's there because of a paycheck, because of a benefit package. It's simply a step towards something else that he'd rather have, but he has to go through this in order to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so there's really not a sense of that work being part of his life that's helping develop him, that's helping him have an impact in the world, that's having him be part of a greater, something that's greater than himself, that he's fulfilling a purpose in that place of work, but rather it's a meaningless 9 to 5, grind it out, really not finding any life satisfaction or fulfillment in it.
Yeah.
It's tough to see that when guys are in that place. But yet when you take work away from men as well, there's a certain element to that to where they begin to just kind of face the same thing. I've talked to so many guys when they retire and they feel like, well, I feel like I have no significance. I feel like I have nothing to look forward to doing. They begin to, lose their strength physically. They begin to lose their sense of identity because they were so wrapped up. Their identity was wrapped up in what they did.
Yeah.
And so we see how the world has created this picture of work as being a very negative thing, but yet we also see in the lives of those same people in the work field that once you take the work away from them, they are lost.
Mm-hmm.
So work has a much greater place in our lives than what we might think. And to rethink it is to understand that work is not a negative thing. Work is actually a great thing. To actually be able to work and create and produce and do something that brings value to society is a fantastic thing. And so men in general can grasp a hold of that concept of work and be able to really find fulfillment in their work and really be able to begin to master the skills that they have and become craftsmen and become effective in whatever it is that they're doing in a way that brings them certain levels of fulfillment and certain levels of satisfaction to where they enjoy their work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take that element and then you mix it in with a man of God who has a faith in God and who's got a calling of God upon his life and an assignment from God on his life, then you can take that to a whole nother level where you're actually being part of an eternal assignment and purpose that God has for you when you're at work. And so you combine your work with this understanding that God's in the work that you're doing with you, and it takes your work to a whole nother level of purpose and meaning.
Yeah. And why this is so important is because as men, work is a majority of our lives.
Yeah.
And if we hang that side of our lives up, that side of who we are up when we clock into work, that's 70 of our waking hours through a week that we're not making an impact, or we're not living out the assignment in our lives, where once you realize that it's the same spirit that we carry on Sundays or on the weekend or with our family, we can carry at work and have impact. Understanding that is super beneficial to not just yourself, but those around you, those who you come in contact with, your coworkers.
Yeah.
And work is such a big part of our lives. And if we can continue to make our impact, not just on Sundays and not just on the weekends with our family, but throughout our entire week, it gives you more fulfillment.
Yeah.
Which I believe God wants us to be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to walk that in our career is really important.
Yeah.
And shifting that mindset to being work is good. I can do good things at my job. I can have deep, awesome connections with my coworkers, and I can pray for them. I can talk to them. They can come to me with stuff that's going on outside of work, and I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
It's just like the impact that you can have in your workplace is huge. You just need to recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you picture, I've met guys who have recently retired and they get to the end of their career and they have that retirement party and their company gives them a nice watch and they've got their retirement plan in place and that type of thing. But they look back over their career and they're like, wow, I just spent 35, 40 years of my life working for a paycheck. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, is that really all I did with that time? Because like you're saying, I mean, if you're working, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, you're spending a large part of your life at work. And if that work is meaningless, other than just a paycheck, then that means that much of your life is meaningless. And God never intended us to live that meaningless life, like you're saying. He wants us to live a life that's abundant, that's fulfilled, where we are bearing much fruit and where we are fruitful. And when we're at work, we have as much opportunity to plant seeds, to prepare soil, to plant seeds, to water seeds, to see fruit come. If you're looking at it in spiritual context, we have the opportunities to do that in a powerful way on a day in and day out basis, to where at the end of a 35, 40-year career, instead of just looking at a nice retirement account and a watch, you've got, no, I invested in the lives of the people that I worked with. I was able to do these different things that that impacted the life of the people around me, that impacted the industry that I was in a powerful way, rather than just kind of working all those years for a paycheck.
Yeah.
And we see that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, where God takes Adam, and Adam has been created, and then God places Adam in the garden and then gives him work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And now Adam was perfect at that point. This was before the fall, but Adam was not fully developed as a man. And so God puts him in the garden and then allows that work to take place. And that begins the process of God developing Adam.
Mm.
And so we also understand that work is more than just a means of provision, but it's also a means of development.
Yeah.
And God is developing Adam, and he's saying, hey, I'm going to give you some responsibilities here, and you're going to tend and care for the garden. You're going to take and you're going to name the animals. You're going to have responsibilities that are going to cause you to grow, that are going to cause you to develop, that are going to cause you to become fully the man that I made you to be. And so work also has this important element of developmentally in our lives. And so understanding that when you're at work and it's hard, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
God's using that to develop you. Understanding that when you get put additional responsibilities on your shoulder, but your paycheck didn't necessarily go up like you'd hoped it would, but yet you're getting more responsibility, that's okay.
Yeah.
God's using that to develop you. And so rethinking work and understanding that it's part of what God made you to do, and that it has an opportunity for you to be living out your kingdom assignment while you're at work, not losing those hours just to the grind and to the production and the making a paycheck, but you're living with an eternal purpose while you're at work. But God's also using it to develop you. It's going to really transform the way you think about work and the way that you go to work.
Yeah. That's good. I think that's good to shift your mind like that, to where, like, I feel like most people would come home and grumble and gossip about that stuff. I mean, the hard stuff at work. My boss asked me to do this one thing today, and did I get a pay bump for it? No. Did it add more to my plate? Yes. So most people would probably come home and complain about that, instead of using that opportunity and recognizing it for the growth that it's going to create in you from taking on that extra burden, that extra weight. I mean, how do we get bigger and stronger?
Right.
We throw more weight on.
Yeah. Yep.
God works in that same way with our faith, and building our faith up and building us up as men to take on more.
That's right.
He puts more on our plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But recognizing and having that mindset, it's really hard to have that mindset, to not be frustrated.
Yeah. Well, we still, so part of that story as well with the Genesis story is that whole arrangement, not arrangement, but that whole place where Adam was working in the garden, that was actually all undone with the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And what was implemented at the fall? The curse.
Yeah.
God says, hey, from now on, you're gonna eat from what you plant in the ground, but it's gonna cost you. You're gonna by the sweat of your brow. You're gonna have to deal with the thorns and the thistles and the challenges that come now with a world that is now under the influence of the curse.
Mm-hmm.
And so as kingdom as men of the kingdom, as men on assignment, as mighty men of God, we work in an environment that is under the curse that was put upon the earth at that point in time. But we're grateful because as men of God, we've also been freed from the curse because of Jesus's work on the cross when he became the curse for us. And now we're no longer under the full effects of the curse, but we still have to work within a world that is cursed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where all the struggles you're talking about come from. When it's like, you know, you go to make that concrete pour and you've got everything planned out, and then you're pouring, and all of a sudden the weather breaks and it just dumps on you and it ruins the finish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or vice versa. You pour it, the sun comes out, you have no shade, and it, you know, I'm speaking in my concrete context here, of course, but all day long, you're going to experience the impact of the curse on your work, and it's going to be a struggle. But understand, like you're saying, if you understand that that's there to develop you, make you stronger, man, that's like a workout at work.
Well, and rejoice in it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
The most fun I've ever had at work is when it's a grind, but we're joking around and having fun and just recognizing, you know what, this is work, this is a grind, but we're going to make the best of it, and we're still going to have fun.
Yeah. Set the
And
tone.
it's the crew, or the work crew, that all they do is grumble.
Yeah. Oh,
who wants to be on that
Yeah.
crew?
Don't
I
be
want to
that
be on the
guy.
crew that's having fun. You're still doing the same work.
Yeah.
You're working side by side doing the same exact thing, but I want to be on the crew where the guys are joking around, having fun, making the best out of it.
Yeah.
Understanding that this is a grind, this is a learning experience, but we're doing it together and we're going to make the best of it.
That's right.
That to me is like a godly crew that recognizes their assignment, that it's not going to be easy. A lot of the time, our days at work are not easy.
Right.
That's why it's work. And like what you're saying, it's like we're still living in the world where that curse is present, but we don't have to be under the influence of that curse.
That's right.
We don't have to be under the influence and grumble and be
right.
Cursed people.
Yeah.
We're set free.
Yeah.
So,
and I tell you, the construction industry and being in business, that was one of the greatest shapers of my life.
mm-hmm.
When it came to a refiner's fire, when it came to all the analogies, right? The potter's wheel. God used that industry to shape my life so well.
And you remember those moments.
Oh,
the hardest moments you remember.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you're exactly right. Instead of that making me want to grumble and complain and then I'm never going to do that again. Or saying I'm going to quit and do something easier. It was one of those things where when I understood that God was using that to develop me, the mindset quickly changed from, oh, that job didn't go well. Okay, good. Well, what did we learn?
Yeah.
And how can we leverage what we learned to take on that hard, complex job again, but succeed next time?
Yep.
And once you go through that process and you begin to do it well, for instance, you take on some of these really difficult concrete finishes on a custom flat work job. The first time or two you pour those on your own, it may not turn out. You may end up pulling out the jackhammer or the machine, the equipment, and tearing it out and doing it again, which sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But your mindset could be, well, I'm going to never touch that kind of finish again because it's too risky, too difficult. That was never my mindset. My mindset was always, well, it didn't go well the first time. Well, that was our first time. What did we learn? Let's leverage what we learned. Let's do it again and make it better. And that's how you develop the ability to do things that other people can't.
And it makes you more valuable.
Brings tremendous value.
Because, yeah, you're stepping out to do that. You could be that company that's afraid to fail, that doesn't step out, that only does that one type of work, whatever that one type of work is, that doesn't take that step and test their faith and do new things.
Mm-hmm.
But making the decision that you made, you're now more valuable because of the lessons that you learned.
Yeah.
And knowing you and those people that step out, they continue to step out and they continue to add value.
Yeah.
Like, you may only take on that specialty work of a size. You may limit your size at first. Then you're like, you know what? Let's make do a project a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
All right, there's more lessons to learn.
Totally.
You're more valuable. Now you can do
Yeah.
bigger tasks. So
Yeah, and you realize that you're willing to step out and try new things and there's risk involved.
yeah,
But you're willing to take the risk because you know the benefit and the reward that comes from that. And so
it's good.
realizing that failure isn't final, realizing that when you're starting something out, there's going to be shortcomings, there's going to be areas where you're just going to have to learn from experience. It's going to be hard, but allowing that to be part of your mindset. And, and this is something that really anybody, whether they're a man of faith or not, can get a hold of and really do well in. This is part of the general way that God made us and the way he made our minds. And so it's important that we start, though, with the way we think about work and our mindset of saying that there is greater purpose in my work than just the paycheck.
Yeah.
And that God made me the way I am, and he gave me certain skills and abilities that are going to be highlighted in the work that I do that allow me to do it well and to be able to actually fulfill part of my divine purpose in that work. And that in that place of stepping out and doing those things with excellence and being a craftsman in those things, I'm going to be developed myself, and I'm also going to have an impact in the lives of the people around me.
So you're saying God didn't just create missionaries to do missionary work.
Right. Yeah. You're having influence everywhere you go, man, with your vendors, your subcontractors, your employees, your coworkers, your leaders, the people who are your direct reports to. Those you're having influence at every level. And that's a beautiful thing about work is just the fact that over time, if you take it seriously, you can see tremendous impact in the lives of the people around you. And it's an amazing thing to see.
Yeah. And I've seen this I think anyone that's a part of a crew, maybe, I don't know, I'm only focusing, I've only been a part of construction crews and fire crews, but you as a single person who carries the Spirit of God can change the atmosphere of your crew just by your mindset, how you carry yourself, and I think just having fun changes your atmosphere. Like, worship should be fun. Like when we're singing worship at church, it's fun, it's a good time. We can do that at work, and we should make our work fun. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in full agreement of that. I just think that that's next level mindset stuff there when it comes to what you define as fun. Because when you look at struggle and when you look at the challenges and when you begin to say, bring them on, it's okay, you enjoy that. I feel like that there's something to where the fun part of it is not fun like the fun like when you have as a kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the fun of wrestling and being miserable and suffering, but you know that you're working to wrestle through this for a positive outcome. And so in that place, it's a ton of fun.
I'm confusing fun with joy. I think we should be joyful.
Yeah.
Even like James is a perfect example. I go back to James all the time. It's like, find joy when you're going through struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. Count it all joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For it's producing something in you. The struggle, the testing is producing something in you. So let's find joy in it. I love being that guy that can, instead of grumbling, can find joy in it. And I love that aspect of being able to affect your crew that way, of like, this sucks, but we're going to have joy when we're doing it.
Yeah.
Or else it's going to make the job that much worse.
Right.
Like when you don't find joy and you're doing a really crappy job, or you guys had a really crappy day, it's blah.
Right.
It's not, I'd rather be at home.
Right. I love what you're saying there, because I feel like for me, one of the things that I learned, like driving to work and it's raining and 34 degrees out, and you're going to have to go frame all day, and you're slipping on that rain gear, and you're rolling out, in the mud, slogging around. I mean, it's just when you've got a crew of guys. Speaking of a crew of guys, it's like it's hard to keep morale up, especially when you're into that like 6-8 weeks.
Yeah.
and I love what you're saying, because I found that one of the litmus tests that I could use for myself on how I was doing in my mindset about work was, am I joyful? And when I wasn't joyful, I realized that I needed to make some adjustments in the way I was thinking and in the way I was approaching my work. Because you're absolutely right. When we are in a place where we are working and fulfilling our responsibility as a provider, we're also working towards our purpose and assignment that God has on our life. We're working, and these challenges that we're facing are developing us. That's all good stuff. And the conditions should become something to where the conditions don't matter. Yeah. And this is where I've talked about it before. This is where that no factor mindset is so critical. And we would teach our guys this no factor mindset so that they wouldn't base their quality of their day and the way that they started their day off based upon the elements. Yeah. Because if you're going to work and it's 70 degrees out and sunny and just a beautiful day and you're going to frame all day, I'd rather do that than a lot of other stuff. It's a blast. It's so fun. But given the winter conditions here, you're going to have weeks and weeks where it's wet, muddy, and cold. And if you allow that to determine how the quality of that work in your life, you're going to be miserable. Yeah. And so being able to understand what you think about, to think about work properly and in a healthy way, and the fact that God's in it with you and that you're not just there to make a paycheck, but you're actually fulfilling a divine purpose, there's a tremendous amount of joy that you can experience even in the suffering. And when that joy is not there, that tells me that I'm not operating. I need an oil change. If you look at the analogy of a motor, or something's not functioning right within this system that I need to look at and make an adjustment. Yeah. And so being able to use that as a litmus test is really good. So if you're at work and you're like, man, I'm really hating my job. Yeah. There's no joy in it. What are some things that you need to be looking at that you're doing or not doing that need to be adjusted so that you can actually come into that place of having the right mindset about work? And also understanding that if you look at work as worship, which is very much a biblical concept of us doing this work as unto the Lord, that worship is not simply what we do when we sing a song at church, but worship is what we give ourselves to, what we give our time, our energy, our talents to. That's what those things that we give those things to is what we are doing in worship. And when we are giving our time, our talent, our energy in our work, it's an opportunity for us to worship in our work. And, we have, Colossians chapter 3, 23 and 24. What does that say? I think you've got that.
I wrote it down. Yeah. Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters.
Yeah. So we're like working as to the Lord. This is an opportunity for us to worship God with the work that we do with our hands. Whether you're a doctor, an attorney, a construction blue collar guy, whether you're a salesman, whatever it is, do it as unto the Lord with all of your heart. And in that place, as a man of God, you are actually working out this worship to God. And when the circumstances get challenging and it becomes suffering, you can find joy in the fact that you're doing it to the Lord, that He has you there for a purpose. Yeah. And He's using this for your good. And it changes your whole dynamic of, rather than it being a grind that's breaking you down, it's actually something that's a challenge that's building you up. I love that.
Yeah. And it's also setting standards for yourself. And also, if you work in a crew atmosphere, it's setting standards for your crew too. Like if you're doing everything as in you're worshiping you're doing it as a worship to the Lord, you are going to do it to the best of your ability,
Yeah.
no matter what the circumstance is. And it's going to set a standard for yourself and your crew.
Right.
And they're going to see, oh, I could do this job that fast.
Yeah.
For yourself too. And then I guess like what you were talking about earlier is when you're feeling off, you're not feeling the joy is what we were talking about, but you're not feeling up to snuff. You're not hitting that standard. Okay, well, what are some things that I need to iron out here so that what I'm doing right now working is worship?
Yeah, because if you look at guys who in their work cut corners, cheat the system, try to squeeze everything they can out of their work and not give it anything, take as much as they can and not give it for as little as they can give. You see these different types of people out there, and it's like that's not like doing something holy with all your heart as unto the Lord. The Lord would not be honored by your efforts in that. And so as men on assignment, as mighty men of God, and we want to be men who always bring that level of quality. Who, and the qualities in our work is a reflection of what's in our heart and what's in our mind and what's in our attitude and our mindset. And we bring that because God's done a work, not just in our, he's done a whole work in us of making us men who are whole and complete. And so we come to work and we bring that attitude of excellence. We bring that attitude of hard work. We bring that attitude of I'm going to contribute 100% and be a team player. I'm going to be the guy who's not going to complain, like you're saying. I'm not going to complain about the challenges. I'm going to be looking for a solution and then bringing our team together to see how we can conquer this thing. Because we're not called by Jesus to be defeated. We're called to be overcomers. Mm-hmm. And overcomers live at a different level. If you live in a place in a vacuum where there's no challenges and there's no pressure and there's no difficulty, then what is there to overcome? Jesus calls us to be overcomers. And so we've got to learn to overcome. And he uses the work that we do to help us learn that, develop that, so that then when we overcome at work, it helps us overcome the temptations when we're alone. It helps us overcome when it comes to standing in the gap for our families and our friends. It helps us have a mentality of someone who's going to rise to the occasion and step up and do the hard thing in the moment to overcome, because of the fact it starts with mindset.
Yeah.
But God's doing that work and developing that in us while we're in the process of working that out through the challenges that we see at work.
Yeah. That's a big difference between, what we're talking about is that mindset of being overcomer versus being defeated. And the defeated person is going to grumble, is going to complain, is not going to come up with any solutions, is more than likely going to quit, going to walk away, go towards the path of least resistance, like what we've talked about in previous times. But that overcomer, what Christ has done on the cross and the victory that he's won for us, and we carry that through our entire day,
right?
There's nothing that can take us down. We're going to overcome absolutely everything that comes at us, even when it doesn't really make sense. And carrying that with you, that mindset shift, is just, as men, if we can just grab hold of that and remind each other of that, because there's sometimes where I walk in here and you're like, hey, we have victory. Vice versa. Like, we should be calling each other out when we hear some defeated mindset little nuggets. We should be sprinkling victory nuggets.
Mindset is not developed in a think tank. Mm-hmm. Mindset is developed in the process of adjusting our thinking based upon what we experience in real life. And the workplace is a tremendous shaper of mindset. And we're not going to go into our workplace fully prepared and fully developed and ready to go. But God uses the workplace and the challenges that we experience there to shape our mindset. And so going from being a person who's defeated to being a person who's an overcomer, a lot of that's developed in the challenge of struggle and in the challenge of having to deal with challenges and obstacles and things that we run into at work, lead through them in a way to where we don't just give up and quit. We don't just complain and whine and grumble, but we actually work through that in a way to come out on the other side as a victor or as a winner. And I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast on this, but the most clear conversation to have on that would be like the mindset of a person who's a victor versus a victim. I feel like that would be a great topic for another episode, but developing that victor's mindset versus the victim mindset is really key in this. But God uses the workplace to do that in our lives. And so understanding that we're not saying that, like when I first started working, I didn't have all this developed in me, but work was one of those things that God used to help develop this in me. I didn't have that no factor attitude when I was 18 years old on a framing crew in the summer heat of Missouri. I had to be worked in me, and I had to watch other guys have that toughness and that grit and be like, oh, wow, okay, well, I need to shut up and stop complaining and just get back from my lunch break and get right back to work, even though it's 105 degrees out with 100% humidity and I'm tired and I don't want to, and I'm sunburnt and whatever it is,
Yeah.
I'd see these guys just get back after it. And it was like, okay, I guess I'm doing the same thing. And so God used the workplace to develop me, to toughen me, and to build grit. And so those are the places that make boys into men.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the beautiful things about how God has used work, allowed us to step into that environment and create men out of it.
Yeah.
And and so this whole concept though of work as worship is us having this attitude that we're going to work and that the work that we do is an expression of worship to God is really interesting. And I love how, like, we see in Matthew chapter 4, Jesus calls his disciples, and there's a section in there where he calls to these guys who are out there fishing, and Jesus calls to them and says, hey, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And these were men who had been exposed to Jesus and his teachings prior to this interaction. And so they knew who Jesus was, they knew his message, and they were beginning to hear more and more about Jesus. But Jesus calls them to another level from just knowing about him to actually knowing him and actually following him as a student or as a disciple. But what I love about this story is that Jesus calls out to them in the context of their work. They're fishermen. That's what they do. They fish, and they know how to operate a boat. They know how to navigate. They know how to figure out where the fish are at.
That's their passion.
That's their passion and what they do. They know how to cast nets, mend nets. They know the technique of fishing.
Yeah.
And Jesus meets them right where they're at and says, hey, you fishermen, I'm going to make you fisher of men. And so this is where we see that beautiful, like, marriage of the divine connection between what we do as work and what we do as men on assignment.
Yeah.
Because God meets us with where we're at in the context of what we do, and then he calls us to a different purpose within that context. And so he says, hey, you're fishermen right now. You fisher of fish, but I want to take you and make you fishers of men.
That's a good reminder. Sometimes we just feel like our work, like God doesn't see our work or our career, even though that's, for a lot of us, it is a big part of our lives. It's a passion. It's something that we have so much knowledge in, and we invest so much time in, and we take time to research how to be better at our careers and how to do it longer and all these things. Like, there's so much time there, and we have a passion for it. Why wouldn't God, like, recognize that?
Yeah.
And this is just kind of a good example of, like, he recognizes your trade and what your passions are. And like you said, he meets you right there. So we don't need to, like, shy away, like, oh, I'm an iron worker, or, oh, I'm a construction worker, or whatever your thing is. Like, the Lord can share that passion with you and
Mm-hmm.
like sees value in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it just wants you, I just want guys to see the value in the work that they do and how they can bring kingdom to where they're at.
Yeah.
That's just a good story
Yeah. It's pretty remarkable because God actually formed us individually.
Mhm.
He knows us individually. And so he gave you skills and abilities, and he gave you what's called a calling, which is a place of understanding that you were meant and created for something bigger than just going through the day-to-day life and
Yeah.
living the day-to-day life. There's more out there for you. And God makes us each differently. Like some of us, like for me, from the time I was a kid, I was a shepherd, not a German shepherd, but a shepherd. I was a pastor. I would take care of the people around me, and I would protect the people around me, and I was concerned about the people around me, and I would rather see you as a friend of mine succeed than I would have to succeed. I would rather. I was willing to not win if you could win.
Mhm.
Literally, it was like why that was how I was wired, and I would bring peace to conflict. I would bring protection to people who were getting bullied. I had no problem living my life for others, but not everyone's wired that way. You've got other people who are wired more like a prophet of the Old Testament, to where they're going to be a more fiery personality, and they're going to be like just say it like it is and come out with it, and they're going to speak very strongly and not be worried about what other people think. You see other people who are, like very organized and administrative, and they're very good, like field generals. And, even at recess, you see the kid who's always like, okay, no, you go first. And you're
Barking
playing.
orders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like playing kickball, and someone's out there. No, you play shortstop. And, you know, there's always going to be that guy who's going to have a more kingly approach. And so we see these like biblical type archetypes of leaders, where it's kings, prophets, and priests.
Yeah.
And God wires leaders in different ways. And even in an unredeemed, an unsaved position in life, you see that worked out in the lives of people, because that's the way God originally wired them.
Yeah.
And, when we are
That's
redeemed
good.
and God comes in, and he's, we're surrender our lives to him, and we're saved, and God begins to restore those callings on our life and tie them into his eternal purpose and plan. And we can begin to operate in those things on a daily basis in our work.
Yeah.
And so you might be a prophet, and you might need to speak up if your crew's kind of cutting corners and slacking off, and you need to be the fiery voice that's like, hey, no, we need to get our rears in gear, do the things that we're getting paid to do.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to be the pastoral guy on the crew and taking care of guys and making, hey, how you doing? You seem like you're kind of low today.
Yeah.
Is there something that we can talk about? Or, or you're going to bring a joke into play to kind of lighten the mood or whatever. Or the kingly guy who's like, you know what? We've got the wrong guy. I speak in construction terms. We've got the wrong guy assembling walls today. This guy's faster, better with a nail gun. We're going to put you on the cut station. You're going to be the cut man. And you're organizing the crew so that it works more efficiently. And
Yeah.
those things are just kind of worked out naturally.
It is. That's so funny how in the crew environment that just happens.
Yeah.
And it's never like, you never want 4 pastors together. You never
Yeah.
want 4 kings together.
That's so true.
You
Yeah.
know, like everyone
Right.
kind of just finds their God-given assignment, and it's like I'm always a part of like a 3 or 4 person crew, and like everyone fits into one of those categories.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess if there was all 3 of the same person, I guess it just doesn't work out, and then you kind of get a new crew, or I don't know. But
Well, yeah, there's
every
lots of
single
times.
crew that I'm a part
Yeah.
of, there is one of each
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah. You get into trouble when you don't have the right guys at the right place at the right time, for sure.
Yeah.
And trying to, as a leader, if you have any input into that or insight to offer, it's good to recognize that, and having the right guy in the right place is super critical,
That's
and
awesome.
but when you realize though that your work is more than just getting up, driving to work, and going through the motions. It changes the way that you look at your day. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool is like when you look in Scripture, we were talking about this before we started recording, but the first person in the Bible to ever be filled with the Holy Spirit was not a king, was not a prophet, was not a priest, but it was a craftsman. Mm-hmm. In Exodus 31 talks about, I think it's Bezalel, and it says that God had basically given him skills and abilities as a craftsman in all kinds of different types of trades, whether it's goldsmithing, whatever, all these different kinds of trades. And it says that God poured his spirit out into Bezalel for the work that was to be done in building the tabernacle. And so for me, it's just like super cool that the first person to be filled with the Spirit was a guy who was a craftsman. Mm-hmm. And that his work took on a completely new tone, knowing that he was working for the Lord and he was under the influence of the Holy Spirit, and that what he was called to do was so important. And if we could understand now that in the new covenant, since Jesus, now as believers, that we are filled with the Holy Spirit and the Spirit of God is in us, and we are living our lives surrendered to the Word of God and also surrendered to and being led by the Holy Spirit in our lives. Yes. And so when you go to work, you're actually like Bezalel, you're actually filled with the Spirit and you're there on assignment. And it's not just going through the motions. It's like, what are the opportunities that God puts in front of you on a daily basis that you should be looking for to actually fulfill his assignment for you that day? Yeah. You're not just going to a meeting. You're not just going to a meeting. You're going to an assignment. Mm. You're not just having a conference call with someone. You're actually on assignment. You're not just going to go and meet with a customer. You're actually on assignment. And in every one of those interactions, the Holy Spirit can use you in whatever way he asks you to do. And so when you have that shift in your mindset that I'm actually working in conjunction with a partnership with the Holy Spirit here, and that I'm not just going through the emotions, but I'm actually on assignment, that means that every interaction I have with a coworker, an employee, or a vendor, it becomes an assignment. Oh, and that's good. Wow, what opportunities would there be if your eyes were open to that? To pray for someone, to encourage someone, to shift the environment in the room and go from being like this negative, complaining, grumbling to being like, hey, let's do this. We're going to have fun. It's hard, but let's make it fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Let that change you.
Yes.
Let that, man.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Right. Yeah. And that type of mindset going into our work changes everything.
Yeah.
It's so much life that comes to it. And it radically transformed me to where it was like, I was a framer at the time. During that, when I got a hold of this, I was framing. We hadn't really started the concrete division yet, and I was framing full time. And I remember getting hit with this, like, you're not just building walls and floor systems and roof structures and moving lumber and leading crews. You're on assignment. It was like, okay. And then it was like, opportunities that I had before now looked different when I'd see a guy who was really having a rough time. It wasn't like, hey, buck up, camper, let's get to work. And, it was like, hey, what's going on? Let's grab lunch together today. All right. And let's talk a little bit. Or at the next break, going over to him and saying, hey, is there something I can pray for you about? It seems like you're having an off day. To where you've got some rapport built because you've worked together. And then these opportunities come up, and who else is going to say that to this guy? Who else is going to speak into this person's life other than you in that work environment? And it's like this mission field opens up in front of you to be able to speak into the lives of so many people if you're aware of the opportunities and if you have this in your mindset. But just like Bezalel, the Spirit of God is in you, and he's going to put someone on your heart, and he's going to highlight someone to you. He's going to say, hey, I want you to go give that guy a word of knowledge.
Mm.
I want you to go just talk to that guy, encourage him, pray for them. And there were times where I was hit by just by the Spirit of God while I was working. And I remember one time specifically, the first time this happened to me, I was framing a wall up. It was a long, like 50 something foot wall, 9 foot tall wall. I'm framing it up and I'm just there, just crying. Just like I've got tears flowing out. I'm like, what the heck is going on? But I had heard about something that had happened to a person in another company. And I began to pray for that guy. And the Spirit just moved that pastoral part of me and was like, I was starting to intercede for this guy and pray for him while I'm framing. I'm like, I'm crowning studs, putting walls together, window packages, door pack. I'm just getting this thing all, and I'm just crying. And I'm like keeping myself pointed in the opposite direction of the crew.
No eye contact.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just praying for this guy. And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then, man, opportunity. I don't know how many lunches I've sat on the tailgate of a truck eating a meat and cheese sandwich with a concrete finisher or with another framer, talking to them about their wife leaving them, the challenges they're facing, or their drinking problem, or their whatever it is, time after time. And that's the context again of construction and the blue collar world. But if you work in an office, if you work in an industry where you have relationship, there's opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a break room, you have a table.
Yep.
You sit down, drink coffee. Yeah. For us, I mean, it's, I don't want to say it's easy for us at work, but I mean, I live with my guys for 24 hours.
Wow. Yeah. You guys eat together, do everything together, right?
Yeah. So dinner table,
wow.
After dinner, I mean, 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. conversations at the table. Like when I recognized like it's okay to have like community and connection at work. We can talk about hard things. We can talk about things that we're struggling with. And it's crazy how like once you open that door with your crew, it just becomes the new culture. Like I think every shift I'm on duty, we're up till 10 p.m. just discussing stuff. Yeah. And so once you recognize that, it's so powerful. But yeah, just lots of connection and just being there for each other. And you have to be vulnerable. For people to be vulnerable with you, you have to be vulnerable with them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you have to step out and be that guy and talk to someone about what you're struggling with. These are some things, or maybe this is my testimony. This is where God has come through in my life, and you share these things, and then you realize there's so many connections with their story and what they're going through. You open a door of vulnerability for them to say, you know what, I've struggled with that too. Yeah. And so these things can happen at the workplace. Well, and that's one thing that I love about my job is that whole aspect of it's basically like a sleepover with your friends every third day. Right. Yeah. But there's lots of opportunity for us to pray with each other and have conversation and community over meal, coffee. But whatever your work is, there's an opportunity there for you to make that connection with your people. And God made you what you are. You have an assignment on your life, no matter what your calling is, what your career is. You are doing that for a purpose. So understand that you don't have to be a missionary to be on a mission. Right. Like you can, if whatever you are, if you're in the break room, make those connections with those people, or else you're going to spend 40 years doing something that you're not going to be fulfilled with. Right. You're going to regret not making those connections at the workplace. And God has more. Yeah. God has more for you. That's right. Yeah. There's so many seeds that have been planted, so much fruit that we have not even seen because we've planted seeds in the hearts and lives of people around us through the years. And you don't always get to see the fruit of it, but yet God does. Yeah. And all of those things are counted towards you in your life. And that's fruit that you've actually invested towards in your life at work. And so rather than it being a time where you just worked and got paid and you earned what you earned in that moment,
it's something that has eternal value.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And,
And
plus, these guys are, the other element to what you're talking about is that came to mind is that these guys see you at your best. They also see you at your worst.
yeah,
I don't know how many times. Well, yeah, there was a lot of times when guys saw me at my worst, when I would blow up or when you know, yeah, I actually have moments in time that are just like captured permanently where I was at my worst, and the guys see that.
mm-hmm.
And then there's an opportunity right there for a conversation to where it's like, hey, fellas, I'm sorry. I blew my lid. Shouldn't have done that. And I will do better, And so they get to see you in those places. So the humility part, the transparency, the desire to grow,
Yeah,
all of those things are elements to where even when they see you at your worst, there's opportunity to produce good things.
yeah. I'm glad you touched on that, because we're not just pouring out like our cup. When you provide and you create this atmosphere at your workplace, your cup will be overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you pouring out for other people. It's not just you having these conversations for their benefit, but you will, like, there's guys at my work that speak into me that, like, your cup will be overflowing if you create this atmosphere at your work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And those guys, in the crew environment, and I don't know if this is necessarily true in the corporate environment as much.
We
I
don't know
don't,
nothing about that.
not too much. Yeah. I don't, I feel like that those guys have your back,
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was a concrete pumper or a concrete finisher or a lumber delivery guy.
Yeah.
When you have this kind of mindset to where, like, this is coming to mind, a lumber truck driver, he dropped his load of lumber on a job site. I had met him there on site, got everything laid out. And the guy had this like demeanor that was just broken.
Mm.
And I was just like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And so, he gets the work done. I know he's on a schedule and he's got deliveries to take care of. I said, hey, real quick, he always would bring us a big thing of carpenter pencils for free, which, those drivers would always hook us up, which was nice. But I was like, hey, I just noticed you're not your normal self today. Is everything all right? He goes, no. He said, I just found out that my son made a terrible mistake and he's in prison. He's in jail and he's going to go to prison. And I was like, I am so sorry. And in that moment, though, I had a choice of just being like, oh, that sucks. I'm sorry. But it was like, hey, do you mind if I pray for you? And I prayed for him and nothing spectacular happened. It was literally like, man, Lord, I pray for his son. I pray for your presence to be with him. I pray for comfort. Simple prayer goes off. And I just, and because like I said, he's got a schedule to keep. He's got lots of deliveries to make. Every time I saw that guy for the next few years, he'd be like, hey, thanks for that prayer. That prayer was amazing. It marked him in a way, because who else on a framing construction job site is going to take a couple minutes, hear what's going on, and pray for you?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of guys that'll do that.
Yeah.
And so the fields are white with harvest if we would see the opportunities to go in and take steps of faith to say, I'm going to pray for that guy, or I'm going to encourage that guy, or I'm going to share my story with that guy.
That's good.
And so I love that. It's so great. And to know that the Spirit of God's in us, and to know that Jesus has called us to live beyond just the identity that we have in our profession or our trade, but rather he says, I'm going to take that and I'm going to bring you into a place where I'm going to bring you into the kingdom identity of what you do for a living. And you're going to be a kingdom player on assignment in the world. And he's going to make you a fisher of men. And so being encouraged for our listeners to understand, man, that if you're a follower of Jesus and you've got the Spirit of God in you, that he's going to use you for his purposes, and he's going to help you in what he asks you to do on a daily basis. And life can be so much more rich, so much more fulfilling at your workplace when you're working and you're doing it as unto the Lord,
Yeah.
with all your heart. And then that place too, there's like this element of elevating your skill set. You want to be the best firefighter possible. That means that you're going to train. That means that you're going to study. You're going to get certifications. You're going to practice your trade. I wanted to be the best constructor of buildings that I could be as a framer and a concrete guy. So that means I was studying design mixes on concrete. I was studying math to know how to do the roof layouts and figuring out the roof components. I'm looking at the engineering details, trying to figure out how these things go together. We're doing all of these things to increase our excellence.
Yeah.
And it's not done just out of a personal drive to be better, which people have in general a lot, but it was done because it was like, what I do gives glory to God. It reflects on him and my relationship with him. And it also impacts the lives of the people around me and raises the standard for everyone. And so pursue that excellence as well. Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are his workmanship, created for good works in Christ, that he prepared beforehand that we might walk in them.
Yeah.
We're his workmanship. That word has in it a connotation of just like a beautifully crafted thing that was created.
Mm-hmm.
And so as men, as we work, let's be craftsmen in our trade, whatever it is. If you're a sales guy, be an amazing salesperson, right? Study it, learn the tricks of the trade, learn how to be effective in it, learn how you can be a salesman on assignment, working for God's kingdom in the place where you're at, whatever it is. So it's something that's a universal deal, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a doctor, an attorney, whatever. You can practice this and have your work be worship unto the Lord.
Yes. So what are 3 steps that men can take moving forward?
Yeah, right now, today, guys can step into this right away. I feel like that one of the things is how you start.
Yeah.
How you start your day. The way we start sets the tone typically sets the tone for the rest of the day. And so how you start your morning is really important. I think you need to be up at 4 a.m., have a quart of water, have your bare feet touch the ground, get some UV. You know how all the influencers have their morning routine.
Cold plunge.
That's right.
Sauna.
You need cold plunge, sauna, and
red light therapy.
2-hour workout.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, red light therapy.
Red light therapy is a new one.
So basically, if you're up by
hyperbaric chambers,
if you're up by 1 a.m. and you have about 6 hours before you start work, you'll be pretty much ready with the right mindset to go to work. But I do believe though that the way you start is important, and to start your day off under asking God, Lord, help me to look at my work the way you do. Mm-hmm. Help me to approach my day the way that you want me to approach my day. And so really taking that time and saying, Lord, I commit this day to you. I love when I roll out of the sack in the morning, it's like my feet hit the ground and my mind just automatically goes to a place of gratitude for the day and surrender to the day, for the day. It's like, Lord, I surrender my life to you. And it kind of helps me start that. And then beginning to look at your day as saying, Lord, help me to look at the way you do.
Yeah.
So that you're asking him to shape your thoughts about your work. You may not want to go to work. You may not enjoy the work you're going to do that day. None of that matters. That's a no factor thing. But it's like, Lord, help me to step into this day full of joy, full of energy, understanding that I'm doing this for you, understanding that you've got something out there for me today. There's a person to influence. There's a problem to solve. There's a victory to win. There's something to overcome. And you take that type of a mentality into your day, it's going to change the way you approach your work. So that would be number one, would be to start your day off with saying, Lord, let me think about my day the way you do, and shape my mindset about my work.
Yeah.
Number two, very practical. Look for one way that you can serve at work. There's something about going the extra mile. There's something about doing something beyond what's required that helps set the tone for yourself and for the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my captain, we have daily expectations, but one of his expectations for us is that we're going to do one thing for our crew, one thing for our station, one thing for the rig, and one thing for ourselves above what those daily expectations are.
Okay.
And so each of us come in with that mindset that we're going to do something for all those aspects of the job. I mean, you do something different, so whatever that is, but you should plan to serve higher and to do one thing for your crew, and yeah, at least one thing for your crew, one thing for yourself above what your typical expectation is for your work. And I love that, and it's truly served our crew well and has just created this servant mentality in all of our people,
Yes.
that we're going to do something to benefit the crew and our atmosphere and where we're at each and every time that we come into the station.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a caveat to that would be where if you're in an environment of work where that's not going to get appreciated and they have not developed that kind of culture in your workplace, you're not doing this for the approval of the people around you. You're not doing this so that they will be like, oh, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
You start certain things you're not gonna, it's not gonna feed you the way you might want it to, like to where it's like you get approval or whatever. You're doing this for the Lord.
Yeah.
You're going the extra mile. It's going to cost you something. It's going to take some time and some effort, but you're doing it as to the Lord, because Jesus talks about the person who's willing to go the extra mile.
Yep.
But what happens though is if you're in an environment where you are beginning to shape the culture in that environment by your actions, your attitudes, your words, you become an influencer in that environment. No longer settle for just what the culture that's been created, but you begin to shift it yourself.
Yeah.
It's the whole thermostat thermometer thing. We want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. And so part of the being a thermostat is you set the temperature in the room. And so no one may say, "Hey, great job, thank you," at first, but you just do it because you're working to shift the culture. Now, if people are like fired up about it and appreciate it, that's great, because when you get this in the culture, you're right. It's such a better environment to work in when everyone's on board with this. But you start it, you work that into your daily routine of saying, how can I serve today? How can I go the extra mile for my crew, for the people I work with? What is it that I can do today that would it be beneficial to them that's not required of me?
Yeah.
So that's number 2. And number 3 would be to identify your skills and partner those with opportunities to bless someone else and to actually join with the purpose of God and the assignment of God on your life in a way to where you take your skill set and you apply them to the assignment that he has for you. And so for me, that practically what that looked like is I had tremendous skills as a carpenter. I could do a lot of very practical things that a lot of people couldn't. And I would hear about someone who needed a fence or someone who was working on a project and they're doing it themselves. And I'd be like, I'll help you. And I just give my time, and I would go, and I don't know how many fences I've built for people, decks, just, and it was easy for me, but it would have been so hard for them. And the process though, I'm utilizing my skill set to invest in the life of someone else who's so blessed, and that's planting seeds into their life.
Yeah.
So what are the skill sets that you have that you can say, Lord, would you take the skills that I have, the areas where it comes natural for me and I'm good at, and how can I partner those with the assignment that you have for me, maybe in the workplace or outside of the workplace, and then utilize those for a greater purpose?
Yeah.
Those are 3 things right there that I could say a guy could start with right away, to where it's like, begin to ask God to shape your mindset towards your day at work, and begin to look at your day through his eyes. Lord, how do you look at my work day, and how should I? Number two, begin to look at opportunities to go the extra mile and to serve at work. And number three, how can I take the skill sets that God's given me and use those to serve others in a way that would be a part of God's assignment on my life to bless others? You start thinking that way. All of it's kind of an outward focused rather than an inward focused viewpoint. And it's all trying to line yourself up, God, with the way you want me to live my life day to day. And I do want to address one thing real quick. If you're in a place where you hate your job and you've done everything you can to try to influence change and shift culture, and you feel like you've led well and you just hate your job as a listener, a lot of guys, I want you to understand that may not be the place for you to go, but allow that place where you're at right now to shape you and make you into the employee that next company needs.
Yeah.
Allow the challenges that you're facing now to shape and make you into the man that is ready for what's next. Because we're not tied to a career or to a job for the rest of our lives, obviously. And there might be men out there who are in the wrong place and they need to make a shift. And so rather than being in a place where you don't like where you're at and wanting to quit and allowing that to cause you to become a victim or become someone who's defeated and you're complaining and whining, step up and begin to incorporate the things we're talking about, but understand that you're becoming the man that's ready for what's next. And so really guard your heart and your mindset on that. And then secondly, when God called those fishermen while they were in their boat, and he says, hey, I'm going to make you follow me and I will make you fishers of men. It says that they immediately left their nets and their boats and they followed him. And there's some of us that are tied to a job because of the paycheck that is not in line with the call or the assignment of God on our lives. But yet we're fearful of going into that place of following after God, where we think and we really kind of believe deep down inside that is the direction we should take, but we're fearful because, well, there's uncertainty there. There's insecurity there. There's instability there. If you choose to lay down your plan, your ambition, and you completely surrender that to God and you say, Lord, here's my life. I lay down my skills. I lay down my talents. I lay down my ambition, my dreams. I lay all of that down before you. And I will follow you wherever you take me, trusting that he's going to use you in a way that is in alignment with the way he made you, and you have nothing to worry about, and you can trust him to provide everything you need. What would you do? Let's lay down fear. Let's lay down unbelief. Let's lay down our holding on to this job as a point of security and kind of that place where, oh my gosh, this job's providing everything I need. No, that job's not providing what you need. God's providing what you need. And just like those disciples who ended up absolutely turning the world upside down, they were fishermen who responded to the call of God on their life. Mm-hmm. And the call of God on their life was that he took them and he had made them, given them their abilities, their talents, and then he discipled them. And as they laid their lives down for him and followed Jesus, he used them in a completely different way to shape to shape the world and to change the world. And so to our listeners out there, if you feel like you just chose a job because that's what mom and dad said to do, that's what society said to do, and you're kind of in a job that's kind of you're just going there for the paycheck, but you know there's more, begin to pray. Begin to hear the voice of Jesus calling you to follow after him and see where he would take you. But be willing to lay down your security, your comfort, all of those things in order to follow him. Because he might have a mission field for you in another country. Your mission field might be a job site here in the States, or it could be a mission field in another country, or it could be in another city. It could be in another context. But understanding that we want to live our lives on assignment for him, and we want to pour ourselves into the work that he has for us to do. And that can take on the context of, like we talked about, the job that you have right now. But there may be some of you guys out there who've been holding on to a job as a security blanket, and you need to let it go and follow Jesus. And so I put that out there for our listeners. Understand that God is for you. He's given you everything you need. The Lord is my shepherd. I will lack nothing. I shall not want. We can trust him. And so when you hear his voice calling you and you're in the boat and you're a fisherman and he says, follow me and I will make you fishers of men, let's be like the disciples and leave everything and follow him with all of our hearts. All right?
That's good.
That's awesome. Well, I love this topic. I love the ability to capture every day of our lives. 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, every evening, all weekend. Our whole lives are an opportunity to be on assignment for God. Mm-hmm. And if we can capture this and we can live our lives on assignment, man, just think how fruitful our lives will be when we get to the end and we hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant. And so as we wrap up the conversation here, do you have anything else you want to add to it or anything as we wrap it up here?
No, thank you for your words.
No, it's been great. It's a great conversation. And really we'll continue the conversation with other topics. I think we'll step into that victor versus victim as another episode at some point here soon. But want to encourage our listeners that, man, we have this podcast that we do on a weekly basis, but we also have a newsletter that we send out in conjunction with our podcast. It's just another building block to help build your life of faith and help you to step into the assignment of God on your life. And that newsletter is called Waypoints. And it's basically weekly guidance for life and leadership that comes right to your inbox. And you can go onto our website at mobilizedman.com on the homepage, and you can sign up for our newsletter there. And it's just another opportunity for you to be encouraged throughout your week. We've been getting really great feedback from guys who get it and who are reading that and encouraged by it. And so if you'd like to sign up for that, go to our website, sign up for the Waypoints newsletter. It'll come out every Friday morning at 5:00 a.m. So sign up for the Waypoints newsletter. And other than that, I think we are good to wrap this up. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a great week. So until next week, stay on the path.